My name is Florian Laszlo. I'm the CEO of Observer here in Vienna, and I'm a second-generation media monitor as my father bought this company, which is by now 125 years old already.
Wow.
And is one of the founding members of our wonderful association, FIBEP.
Wow, absolutely wow.
I was not really intended to go into the business. I studied law. I was at the French Lycée here in Vienna, and then at the business school, and then studied law. And I eventually even finished my law studies, which was rather a hard feat because I already started working in the company. And things kind of went the way they went, and I went with the flow and had a few turns in life where I decided for the direction that brought me here to this company. And by now I'm more than 20 years CEO of the company, and by now the sole CEO of the company, and had the pleasure of being for 5 years Secretary General of FIBEP. And FIBEP is very dear to me, an important organization that I always try to support. And privately, I have the big luck of having a wife and 4 daughters,
Wow.
and between 8 and 16 years old. And therefore, my life is quite busy, and there is nothing that anyone would call free time or leisure time. So there's always something to do.
Oh my God. So thank you so much for finding time for us. Yeah, between running the company and having time with your daughters and wife. Okay. I would like to talk about media monitoring. So what's media monitoring, how to do it, and again. So could you please tell us a little bit like when media monitoring started and how was it done and how is it different from press clipping?
With words, it's always very complicated because the same words mean different things to different people and in different regions. So I would say that the press clipping, the media monitoring, this is always talking about the same thing. It is the same service that we provide. It only started 125 or 150 years ago in Paris with press clippings because there was only press. So naturally it was called after what it usually was. And so the media monitoring is the same thing, but not only for printed media, but also for all other kinds of media. And therefore it is synonymous in a way. And the press clipping might be a little bit reduced to the printed media. But even nowadays, people want to have press reviews. And what they mean by that is not only the printed press, but still they say press reviews to that. So words and expressions have quite a long time that they keep on going even when they're technically not really correct anymore. And that's even in the internet age, the same thing. And so there are a few examples of things that are called in a way that actually is not correct anymore, but everyone knows what is meant. And so that's the good thing about it. So I would not differ in any way between media monitoring and press clippings.
Okay, so what exactly do media monitoring companies do?
There are several answers to those questions, and with the richness of more than 100 years of experience in a changing media landscape, you could define it in different ways. But starting from taking 3 steps back and looking at our business, it is the business of telling our clients what is happening in the media about them and about their main interests. So we are providing an information service, and we're telling them what is being written and said about them. And this is still the core. That has been on the foundation of our service and our industry, as it was founded in Paris, where perhaps later on I can tell that little story, which is perhaps not true, but at least very nicely put. And that keeps on going. And with every new media type and with every new media outlet, it is not changing. So in a way, at presentations, I sometimes say we're doing the same thing for now than more than 100 years, because it's a human thing. Humans want to know what is interesting to them. And we are providing the means to also actually do that and get it done, and not only theoretically, because theoretically everyone could read every blog post and all the newspapers, but it's technically impossible. So we are the mean of getting people the information that they actually want to find and want to see. And in a more technical approach, we're doing many different things, very complicated, but that's not as important to the client as having their needs met.
You said that it's not possible to read everything in the internet. I'm sure that some of our listeners are asking the question, why? Why is not possible?
Because of lack of time. That is the whole problem. And it's not only in the internet where it's really utterly impossible, but it's even in Austria, we have 16 dailies. If you start reading those 16 dailies, you have to go to your lunch break before you're finished, and then you have all the specialty media. So even there, it's not possible with a rather limited amount of media outlets. So it's a very good point, because actually what we are telling our clients, what we are selling is time.
Right.
Because we're selling them their time that they do not need to consume for those tasks, because we do them quicker, better, more concise, and therefore we're actually in the business of giving time.
Wow, what a great answer. Okay, so media monitoring companies now not only provide the clippings, but what are the modern products and services that the media monitoring companies can offer to their clients? You said that they can offer time, but how do they do that? In what kind of products and services?
This is again a question of perspective. What the client gets, actually no one wants to get clippings. This is not something that you want to have. You want to have the information in it. You want to have reasoning you can pull out of all those clippings. So this is the main point. So what we are doing is that in a way we're providing something which is in the end a clipping. And the clipping might be an extract from a print newspaper. It could be a cutout. It can be a link. It can be a link to a video. It can be just a full text. So a clipping has many variations and forms, but you can sum it up as clippings, as parts of media. And so this is what we're doing in all aspects of media types until Twitter and Facebook as well. They are all reduced to clippings, because what the client wants to have is uniformity. He doesn't want to go to 3 different types of access points and then in different ways and treat them in different ways. So the clipping is kind of the unifier, so that you get wherever, whatever is mentioned about you, you get it in the same way, in the same outlet, at the same point of sale.
You mentioned Facebook and Twitter. These are social media. Is it safe to say that right now social media, it should be a standard offering for each media monitoring organization? And I say standard offering, standard, it should be including in the standard offering for media monitoring services. Is this still something exotic for your clients?
So from the perspective of a media monitor, it is a standard offering. And from the perspective of the client, as there are a few issues, so that local clients of international subsidiaries often are not interested in it, because social media is international. There is no regionality in Instagram. So they don't care about those things because they're not touched by them. They're not in charge of those things, so they don't need that social media content. And on the other hand, you still have many clients who are saying, actually, I don't work with that. I don't need it. I don't care. Or it's way too much. I can digest it and process it. So I'd rather not have it, because I can do anything useful with it anyway. So I'm not paying money to getting it.
Okay. And this is like a part of MMOs, so media monitoring companies, kind of duty to inform their client. Why is that important? Why it should be keeping up with the information?
Yes, because it's also in our own interest, because what we are earning money with is selling the highest number of clippings possible. So this is why it's, again, many years ago, but 15 years ago, 15? Yeah. pretty much 15 years ago. Social media is not really a new thing. So 15 years ago, we started monitoring social media, and it was in 06, 08 or something. And I was laughed at in international meetings because I told them we're selling Twitter by the clip. So we just added it to our media outlet and then our media list. And if a client appeared, he got a regular clipping without asking him, do you want it? Do you want to play a flat rate or whatever? Because clients couldn't digest it, couldn't know what it is. And so we just showed them and we just delivered Twitter. And then some said, oh, that's interesting. That's nice. Others said, I don't care. I don't want to have it. So we kicked it off their individual media list. And by that, we're still selling most of our social media monitoring on a per clip basis, because most clients get 5 Facebook clippings a week and 3 Twitter clippings and perhaps 8 Instagram clippings, depending on the client. So getting it to them at a flat rate of $500 a month, those are pretty expensive clippings. So nobody buys that. But on the other hand, if you buy just for the regular clipping price, it doesn't hurt and you're in it. And that is the issue in those small markets like you're in and like Austria, that we do not have 10,000 clippings. You obviously cannot sell by the clipping.
Several times you mentioned clippings. And I think that for our audience, we need to describe how the clippings are consumed. I know that historically they were like a file, and customers received these files and they just read all the documents which were relevant for them. Right now, there are newsletters, there are channels in Telegram, WhatsApp, wherever, where you can receive this type of relevant data. And there are dashboards, we call them dashboards or media listening platforms. If we speak strictly for media monitoring, do we mean all these different distribution channels, or we still stick with like newsletters and files?
For me, the clipping is the granular thing. It's the atom that is being amassed. And then you can look at those clippings in different ways, but the clipping is the basis, and the clipping can, as I said before, be a link, be a video, be a file, be a PDF file, full text, and most of times it is all of that at once, because one clipping, at least in our company, consists of all those types. You have the link, you have the full text, you have the PDF picture of it, even if it's online, so that it's recorded and doesn't go away like links tend to do sometimes, also for legal precautions. And so it's all of that. And then in our platform, depending on what you want to see, you access those data points at different levels. So you enter it perhaps on the dashboard level to get an overview. There you don't see any clippings, you see just the graphs showing the amounts, which media types, which keywords produce those clippings. But you can as well be on the level of individual clippings and just reading them through like you would in a newspaper. So you go onto your iPad, you click on the first one, and then you turn the page until you're at the last one, and you get a very quick overview. And if you want to, you can read all in detail, or you just take a look at them, and by passing by, you know what happened today in the media in your respect and in your field of interest. And then you have the whole analysis part, where it's even more about the details, where the tags are the big thing. So it's not my company was mentioned, it is which persons were mentioned, which sponsorees were mentioned, which products, in what respect, positive, negative, ambivalent, and all those other things. Was there a picture in it or not? All depending on what the client's interest is, because there are some clients who tell us, send me only clippings where there's a picture. I don't care about non-picture clippings. Okay, they get only those. And others want to have every detailed list where they're in a listing of events where it's just the clipping is kind of half a square centimeter big, technically, because it's just a list. But still they're interested in it. And others say, no. Nothing like that, no mere mentions, just give me the big ones. And so this is the individual approach that every client can decide what is a relevant clipping for them. And then get those analyzed. It's called chart flow, where you can also again click through. It's very easy to use and highlight the different aspects of those clippings.
So I have more of a general question now. So if someone would like to start a media monitoring company, what kind of resources does he need? So what kind of specialists, what kind of technologies, what kind of data, how to obtain that data?
So I would not advise anyone to start a media monitoring company nowadays because it's very cumbersome and you need tons of money, because the pre-financing is huge, because you only can play with the market if you have everything. And so you need to get everything, but you don't have a client to pay for it. And if you have everything, then you can start to acquire clients, and then they're picky and say, no, actually, I don't want to change the provider because, it's only a few €100 a month, but that's not worth it. It's way too troublesome to change the provider because then it's different. And so it's really hard to enter that market. This is why it's a very slow moving market, because the value of our product is not that high price-wise, but it is very integrated into the processes at the client. So there's a very intensive client media monitor relationship. And this is what keeps us afloat, because if Meltwater comes and Cision comes and say, everything new, everything cool, everything standardized, they don't stand a chance because the clients want to have it their way. So you need to be flexible. You need to be very close with the client. And this is what keeps us insulated from quick competition. Rather in Europe than in the US. The US, they're more flip-floppy. They try everything new and then they try another thing. And so this is why the startups have caused the friends at Burrell's way more headache than here in Austria or in Europe, because people tend not to go for the next shiny thing that quickly and rather say, let's take a look at it. And so this is an advantage for the old companies. So in short, you need tons of money, knowledge about the media industry, good access and communication skills to get to all those data points that you would like to get to, because media are not very keen to share those data. So you need to be respected as a reliable partner. And then you need good people getting the clients and then keeping the clients happy. And most importantly, and still, you need human readers. You need people who understand really what the client wants, because the algorithms are nice, but they're not getting there because they do not think in the same way as the clients do. And so you need the reader who is still really providing the data points and the clippings in the way that the clients wants to have them. And this is kind of the service, because the standard automated service, the price point went down so dramatically that you can't pay the IT guys in the back.
Okay, you said that media monitoring organizations are extremely challenging, but with this podcast, we are trying in a way to explain to people and to a little bit show how complex these organizations are. And we would like to tell them how many different roles and how many different specialists actually work in order to produce a product. So could you please tell us the major roles in this type of organization? Like for sure you have IT people, but what do you do with them? You have people who understand media. How do we call them? Some organizations call them researchers, other editors. But just let's describe the roles and just show how complex all of this is. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Perhaps to your prior question, moving into this field, I think the field is very wide and there are useful jobs for new companies within the field. But it's not starting with, I read my newspapers for my clients, because this is kind of the old school thing, which can be for on-top service providers, be a commodity that they buy in and then add value to it so that the client has an added value, and they could do it in a different way and in a more client-oriented way than even the media monitors can do it. So I think there is room in our field and in our industry for new, not competitors, but new providers, like the whole AMEC field, where it's not about the basis like in FIBEP. And every MMO can do the whole thing that also AMEC members can provide if they want to do it. So in a cooperative world, it might make sense not to fully integrate horizontally, but to have partners doing it, have analysts whom you provide the data to, and those analysts then go deeper into the detail and provide further services to the client. That can make sense. And I think there's the potential for new companies and also new FIBEP members, because this is an expanding field. Like you have 3 MMOs in a country, but probably, as in Austria, 8,000 PR agencies. That's the same approach. You don't need 8,000 media monitors, but 8,000 PR agencies. And so that's the same approach here with those media intelligence specialists. But to your other question, Vlad, so I can only describe our company, but I think it's kind of the standard process in
that
our
will be
industry.
Great.
So on the one hand, we have media acquisition. So the media acquisition is kind of the subscription department, as it was only print media. But still, you need to get more from the media than just a subscription, and you get it delivered by postal mail. That was then. By now, you have contracts with the media. They provide you with the digital data in an integrated way, so you don't need to go in there and scan all those papers. This is something we never did in Austria because we established those contracts quite early. We monitor close to 4,000 print titles in Austria. So let alone getting those in time on the server is a work of 2 people full-time, because nothing ever works really properly, even with a postal mail or email or technical solutions and APIs. There's always something that doesn't work, so you need to troubleshoot. So this is a very important part of the media acquisition, and also the basic data of the media, like the print runs, like the users, the unique users, and so on. The same thing is in the field of online, where you need to manage the media list, so you cover everything extensively. Then you have radio and TV, same thing, very tech intensive and very expensive. And then you have the social media platforms, where you need to have contracts with those directly or with providers, having contracts and providing the data. And there we work with a set of 5 different providers, sometimes even providing the same media platforms, social media platforms, because we experienced that 2 providers provide not exactly the same content from those social media platforms, because the social media platforms are a little bit flimsy and they don't want to really share all their content. So it's a mess there as well, and even more unstructured than with the good old printed media that you received by postal mail into your mailbox. And that is something. And then you've got those blogs and news groups which you need to access manually, because they have the robust TXT, so you can't get into it without being a human in the first place. So that's another field where you need specialists who can do that. And that was only the data intake. The other data intake is the client department. So client comes in and says, I want to know everything about traffic. And you tell them, okay, traffic, what kind of traffic do you need actually? And then you develop with the client what he actually needs. And then the client in the discussion realizes that he actually only wants to know about, trams. And the rest of the traffic definitely doesn't interest the client. So it's only about trams. And so you reduce the information need to what the client really wants. And that is usually not what the client says he wants, but it's what you need to find out what he really wants. And that again shows you that an automated do-it-yourself service doesn't work, because the client is not capable of really understanding the breadth of the media and what he then really gets. So this is a service and a consulting work that we need to do. And that is then translated into the systems so that it can be matched with the media data that we took in on the other side. And that is translated into Boolean search operators, and that is translated to the humans, that they really understand what the client wants and can find it.
Please
in the right
explain
way.
more about the Boolean operators, because I'm not sure that everybody knows what these are.
So Boolean operators are a search query finds, so for a computer, text is just an amalgamation of letters, which doesn't have any sense. And computers do not understand what is really there. So they search for patterns. And in the search query, they search for a pattern which can appear in several ways. Like you're interested in sport. If you search for sport with an algorithm, you also find transport, because it's a sport as well, even if it's not a sport in the meaning of the word. And therefore, you need Boolean operators to produce more complex search queries, because you then say sport, but not transport, but only sport in connection to winter and to skiing, or biathlon, ski jumping, but not if it's the Russian team, only if it's the Austrian team. So you get the point. Complexity that is quite easy to understand for a human is a 50 Boolean operator search query, which is then being applied to the text and still produces false positives and false negatives and can't interpret pictures. So therefore, we need a human reader who then weeds out the wrong ones and finds the right ones that the algorithm had to overlook because, for example, a text within a picture or a logo within a picture, it's not really detectable. Technically, theoretically, yes, but not at price point that is viable. So this is kind of then the reading part. And then you have the basis of it all. You have those clippings. And then you need to process those clippings in several ways. On the one hand, you need to process those clippings so they get to the right person at the right time in the right email inbox, which is still the preferred ways of getting it via push in those email inboxes, because you're in the email anyway. And so you get those emails and say, there is a new clipping. How interesting, or not. And then there are data added by our analysts, because you weeded out the transport in the winter sport, and then you need to reconnect it, because perhaps the transport partner of the winter sport team, being Audi, wants to know in how many of those winter sport clippings Audi was mentioned. They were driving around with the Audi and you could see an Audi logo. And then you need to weed out those after the reading by the analysis. And then in the analysis, you also evaluate how valuable was that showing of that wonderful Audi RS6 in those clippings, because of the print run, of the followers, of the engagement of this individual clipping. And then you add quantitative data to it and qualitative data, meaning yes or no Audi picture, yes or no RS6 or RS4, and all the complexity of life. And this is then added in the tagging and coding department. So you have, in the end, in those wonderful charts that you want to show to your client, something to show to him, which is more relevant and more interesting than just the media type spread between online social platforms and print and radio and TV. So you can detail that on the level of how is the top media list for those Audi clippings compared to the top media list to the Porsche clippings in connection to ski teams and so on and so on. And this is then the relevant data that we provide to our clients, and where, again, a whole other set of analysts are attached to, because the data alone doesn't say anything to the client. He wants to have a presentation where the data is put in a way that he can meaningfully understand what that could mean for him. And so that's the whole consulting service on top of it, where no one ever sees a clipping, but only the metadata that we added with automated and human services.
Thank you for this. I think that right now everybody understands how complex this type of organizations are and how many diverse specialists actually are required in order to produce all these different services. Back to you, Alicia.
Yeah, so you actually talk a lot about the clients, and I wanted to ask you, who is the media monitoring organization? Who are the clients? So who needs media monitoring and why do they need them?
Again, taking 3 steps back, everyone who is in the media voluntarily or involuntarily, or who wants to be in the media, needs it. And therefore, our client base is very diverse and very wide, because in a way, there are not many people not needing media monitoring. So the difference between the client and the non-client is if he understands it, that he needs media monitoring, or even if he understands it, if he says it's relevant to me or not. And this is the differentiator. So we have clients from government side, companies, brands, theaters, cultural institutions, museums, NGOs, individuals, VIPs, A, B, C, D, E, VIPs, depending on their stance in the public, and so on and so on. So it's a really wide array of different interests, and they also have different approaches to what they want to get from it. The ones are just loving it, having them printed out in color and just turning the page and saying, look how important I am and where I have been. And others do not care about that at all. They just want to see how many potential contacts did I make? Was it worth it sponsoring this individual? And therefore getting so much airtime. And others, again, are desperate to show their clients that what they had done for them was worth the money that they got for it, be it influencers or be it individuals, sports people that want to then show that it was worthwhile for getting the sponsor money. And those are then those clippings that my father always called those 10,000 euro clippings, because it then can be that this one individual clipping of the highlight title page because you did whatever, hopefully not shoot anyone, but that got you on the title page, that is worth those 10,000 euros that you received in the first place. So every individual clipping is highly important, and this is again why we can't live with 95% precision, and we need actually those 99.5 precision, because if you miss that 10,000 euro clipping, you're really in deep trouble.
I wanted to ask you about how did media landscape change in the last couple of years, but also currently with COVID and with the war just like happening just next door, how the services have changed, how the industry was affected by what's going on in the world.
So in the past 20 years, media monitors have been affected by the change in the media landscape. They had much more work because it was everything new and complicated, and they had to establish new data streams. The old data streams didn't go away, and there's kind of a rule that so video didn't kill the radio star. It's every new media type is just added on top and the others don't go away. So complexity is rising, which is a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is more work. The good thing is more need in the market, because there is no one who can say, no, I got it myself. It's just impossible. The big challenge in the media landscape change is, I think, arriving now. We have Russia's aggression against Ukraine. We have the energy issue. There was climate change issue as well, and it's not going away. So prices are rising heavily for some goods that are relevant to the media industry. And that is personnel, that is paper, and that is energy. So I think the biggest issue that the whole communications industry and also the small media monitoring part of it faces is reduction of volume, because you can't print those many pages of paper anymore. You can't publish that many articles on your online sites. You cannot fill your airwave with relevant content because it's too expensive to produce. So you have reruns and then standard content. And that is an issue when you are based on a volume-oriented pricing. So in the same amount of time, people get less mentions, so their media monitoring price tag is reduced, which is a strategic issue for media monitors like us who are on the per clipping basis. And the other issue is, even if you're on a flat rate model, that the importance of the media is being reduced, and people understand that for the print part, they need to pay more. It's kind of ingrained. It's learned over the years and decades. Social media, that was the thing that was free, wasn't it? So the understanding of the client that they need to pay therefore the same amount as for the print is not really there. And then there are so many startups who say, no, we're doing everything for free. And then there are the platforms who are doing the analysis on Facebook. Facebook analysis is for free if you're a Facebook client. And if you're good with that, you just buy the Facebook analysis and do not need any other analysis on your Facebook data because you're happy with that. You're in your bubble, but if you're happy, it's really hard to get you out of there. So I think those are really the challenges, and they are the same in online and the social and the print part. So I think it'll be interesting, and there will definitely be a certain consolidation in the industry in that classic workload producing part of classic media monitoring.
If I can add to Alicia's question, there are a lot of voices in our industry that currently media monitoring organization should in a way extend their services by not only answering what is the relevant conversation regarding a person or an entity or a brand, but in a way start giving the indication, is this conversation authentic? I'm talking about propaganda and fake news. Do you think, or do you agree with these voices that this should be part of the goal and the services of the media monitoring organizations? Or we don't need to deal with, is this true or false?
Generally speaking, yes, definitely. As companies, as enterprises, the media monitors definitely need to expand the scope of their service, because in the basis, it is the basis, but it's only the basis, and it's not an expanding industry from that part. 6 years, 8 years ago, we invented the thing of neighboring markets and invited to FIBEP congresses people from those neighboring markets. And because I think it's really important to breadth and the scope of your work and of your service, because with only I can send you clippings, there's not much you can achieve in today's market. We're doing market research. We're doing combined analysis. We are providing press releases. We are providing press databases to our clients. So there is a whole toolbox that we are offering to our clients. And this is what we definitely need to do also in the future. So I think there will be expanding scope of their services, where the integration of those services is the big benefit. And on the other hand, we will have many small specialists using the basic data that MMOs produce and add value to them and individualize that for in specific clients, but they then service 10, 20 clients like an agency and not 1,000 clients like an MMO. And this is where the difference lies then.
Okay, right. So you actually answered my next question a little bit. So I wanted to ask, in your opinion, how would the media landscape change in the future? So, but actually said that a little bit, that right now we are dealing a lot with propaganda and with fake news. Do you think that would be a big problem in the future? What are the next things that can change in our media landscape?
I think this is really hard to guess, and probably it'll go in the same way. I mean, just yesterday, Elon Musk bought Twitter, and probably will change, or definitely will change the platform, and probably reduce the relevance of the platform, because he's doing it differently than Jeff Bezos is doing it with the Washington Post. So it's a normal procedure. And do you remember MySpace?
Yes, we are that old. We remember.
That's it. So that's part of it. That's part of the game. But in the basis, it will still be the same, because we are the same. We humans, and the way we interact and how we communicate. And as media monitoring is a very human business, it will stay there because we're staying there. And the rest around is changing, yes, but that's how it is.
Okay. So our podcast is called Media Intelligence Explained. So I wanted to ask you, how do you understand media intelligence? What is it for you?
I love the term media intelligence, especially because it was with my dear friend and then President Mazen Nahawi that we kind of came out came up with that word out of nothing, and it was in Dubai. And then 2014, and then we said, okay, that's it. And we even had the World Media Intelligence Congress dubbed that way. It's a very nice brand and word, which you can fill then with many items and many aspects. So it is kind of an empty shell still, but it's closely connected to business intelligence, and that everyone knows. And this is in the end what it means. It is adding data to media that makes it intelligent so that you can make use of the data. And it's about the connection of data points so that you can make sense out of what is happening out there in the media, where you see how a story is trajecting through the different media types, where you see how you are seen, how your products are seen on an elevated level, and not just, so many clippings, but on the bird's eye view of a forest and not the tree by tree view of a forest. So if you're walking through a forest, you see everything very precisely, but you don't have a clue. But if you fly over the forest, then you've got media intelligence, because you see the landscape, you see how it's evolving, where things are changing. And that is what the media intelligence is to me. It's making all those data points intelligent by connecting them in a certain way and providing actionable results which inform our clients in a way that they can decide better in the future.